QAnon's baseless conspiracy theories have been repeatedly debunked. Despite this, the far-right group continues to manifest its ideology online and into American politics ahead of the 2020 presidential election. Jeff Sharlet, author of the Vanity Fair article, How QAnon Crept into the Mind of Donald Trump and Turned Conspiracy into Reality, examines how the group's ideology is seeping dangerously into the American mainstream. Jeff joins us now with more insight. He's a Vanity Fair contributor and an English professor at Dartmouth College. Jeff, thanks so much for being with us. So give us a breakdown for folks who may not be aware, who don't live their lives online. Who or what is QAnon?
QAnon is the most bizarre and yet sort of most mainstream conspiracy theory in American life in decades. Mainstream in the sense that last night we had the President of the United States all but endorsing this it's a kind of greatest hits mishmash of it's drawing on old anti-Semitic ideas, ideas that Rothschilds are bankers, global bankers are running things, and putting it all in the service of this really disturbing idea that the Democratic Party is controlled by pedophile cannibals and that Trump was chosen by God to stop them with what's called the storm, a mass round of arrests and possible executions.
Yeah, it is this sort of bizarre mishmash, and it seems sort of periodically whatever happens to kind of like filter into the mainstream, they at times just fold in and goes, back to Pizzagate or the weird Wayfair cabinet stuff that was happening this summer. And so it's all these like weird theories. But it doesn't just stay online. How is it that QAnon is able to sort of motivate people into action? Are some of these posts from this anonymous character, are they encouraging people to actually do things, or are people taking it upon themselves?
I mean, it's important to remember that QAnon was born in violence. It came out of the so-called Pizzagate conspiracy theory back at the last election, when a man believed that Democrats were running a child trafficking ring out of a pizzeria in Washington and went with an assault rifle and shot it up. That was the beginning, and it's never really slowed down since. What QAnon does is it makes at the center of its sort of claim this idea that children are in danger. And of course, that concerns us all. And it uses that to sort of blind its followers to what is frankly the insanity of what it's saying. And a number of people then act on it. I wrote about just one woman, she didn't make national news, who decided to save the children by getting into her car and tracking down those who she thought were part of the conspiracy and ramming them with her car many times. No one was killed, thank goodness. She was a mentally ill person, but that's exactly what QAnon can do. It can activate and give a purpose and a focus to violent inclinations. And that's, when you're hearing it from your own president, it's easy for those people to believe like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy. This is real.
Yeah, I mean, that scenario that you're discussing there was a sort of a fascinating one. I just don't understand when people say that they care about these things. Many of the points that they make, I've covered child trafficking all over the world. It does exist, but I don't see these folks joining any groups that try to prevent that from happening. I don't see anybody getting involved in organizations that really look at this stuff. It just seems as if like they listen to these weird conspiracy theories or they read these weird conspiracy theories online, and without any sort of fact-checking or logical rationale or reasoning, then decide to carry out these violent acts like the one you mentioned. And that's sort of what I'm trying to understand, trying to wrap my head around. It's one thing for the President of the United States, if he wants to retweet conspiracy theories through his Twitter account, he can do that, I guess. It's a free country. But it's another for, I think, people to just read something that is online and then choose to sort of act on what they read online. It's just sort of striking to me. And maybe the only thing I can think of is perhaps this might have been how books worked, when Gutenberg first invented printing press. There were things that all of a sudden got disseminated very quickly about your neighbors, and some of it wasn't true. And it's just part of the reality of living in a society that values or doesn't value information.
Well, I think you're onto something there, and the authority of new technology. And when you talk to QAnon believers, time and time again, you find people who are experiencing what to them is a kind of a small d democratic, not in terms of the party, but a democratic ability. I can determine this information for myself. I'm no longer dependent on news media. And QAnon is all about let's research together. So they're constantly talking together, and they go down, this is their phrase, to go down the rabbit hole and to go from one YouTube video to a next, to start pulling up legal. I mean, they read law, they read between the lines and so on. So they feel this incredible empowerment, and they feel like they are doing what is necessary. And they feel like, frankly, that they're doing what they've been told, again, by the president and by many, many right-wing leaders now. The media is not. Absent the media, they become the media.
Yeah, I think sort of a common refrain is, I do my own research. And then when you sort of scratch below the surface to find out what this research, entails, it's sort of hours on YouTube, reading someone else's own research or watching someone else's own research. So I want to talk to you about what the president said. In your article, you actually resurfaced interviews in which President Trump uses language interpreted by QAnon believers as signaling. So last night, he's at this town hall, and he is asked to outright denounce QAnon. This is what he had to say, at least a portion of it.
I know nothing about it. I do know they are very much against pedophilia. They fight it very hard, but I know nothing about it.
They believe it is a satanic cult run by the deep state.
The subject. I'll tell you what I do know about. I know about Antifa, and I know about the radical left, and I know how violent they are and how vicious they are, and I know how they're burning down cities run by Democrats.
So, one of the things about the president, often when he answers questions, is that there's a little bit of doublespeak, right? He says, I know nothing about it, but I know sort of this key component about it. So either you know nothing about it or you don't. Which one is it? And the thing about these conspiracy theories, Professor, is in the spaces where there is no information, they just sort of fill in the gaps. And when I heard the president answer, I thought, this could be even more damaging and thus more empowering for this QAnon platform, because he won't be clear. And so they can just make up whatever they want.
Yeah, and well, you say in the spaces where there's no information, but just as you point out, I mean, you all have done reporting on child trafficking. There is information, and he's giving, the alternative set of facts, and in fact, getting in the way of genuine efforts to stop child trafficking, which is not really what this conspiracy theory is about. For him, is for power. What I wrote about and what I heard last night, and going back to some of his earlier interviews, there was a point in which Trump would reference these kind of, or sort of allude to these kind of conspiracy theories. There was a point sometime this summer where he kind of crossed over. And you hear it even in last night. And that exchange with Savannah Guthrie went on. And at one point she said, we know it's not a satanic cabal. And he says, no, we don't. And you don't know that. And he's real. I think we have to take seriously the possibility that he believes what he is saying now. At this point, that he has, in some sense, taken this conspiracy theory, which he used for political gain, and he has absorbed at least some element of it into his own worldview. When we think of how dangerous that makes an individual, just a regular citizen who goes out and acts on it and commits acts of violence, well, now we multiply that by all the power of the presidency. And I think that, to me, is how frightening and how dangerous this conspiracy theory is now.
Right, Jeff, because here's what I was thinking about when I was looking at your piece and just thinking about the fact that the President of the United States is sending out these signals with regards to these conspiracy theories. There are a lot of people in this country, around the world, who believe that there is extraterrestrial life out there, that they believe that there are aliens out there. Now, I may be one of those individuals who thinks that, right? But if the President of the United States in the 1940s and the 1950s, if President Truman and President Eisenhower and President Kennedy all said, yeah, well, there may be life out there, but specifically with regards to Area 51, we're not doing experiments on captured aliens in the desert. That doesn't exist. We haven't retrieved bodies of aliens. You can trust me on that. I would think that because of those pronouncements, such as they were made by government officials back in those days, that the majority of people may have some suspicion maybe, but you're not going around telling everybody, you know, what's going on in Area 51. We need to storm that installation to figure out what's happening there. In this case, you've got the president of the United States going, wink, wink, I don't know if it's true, but maybe it is true. Who knows? And if you have that coming from the commander-in-chief, that to me is sort of where this is all originating. People are wondering, why is this gaining steam? Why are there some Republicans who are running for office endorsing people who are QAnon supporters? Because the president of the United States is giving air to these conspiracy theories. And it strikes me that if he did not, if he condemned it outright, if yesterday when Savannah Guthrie asked him, he said, it's a crazy thing, I don't know anything about that, I don't want those people as part of my campaign or part of my platform, we wouldn't be talking about this. Does that make, I know I gave you a lot there, but.
Yeah. No, and I think that's so important. And of course, we should note that some Republican leaders have done just that, and some very conservative leaders. But at the same time, you use the example of UFOs, and I always think about this sort of the academic studies that show some huge portion of Americans believe in UFOs, but that doesn't cause any damage. On the other hand, now there's a recent survey that shows over half of the Republican Party subscribes to at least some degree of this violent conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theory that calls for, again, what it calls a storm, which it says that Trump is planning a mass arrest of thousands of Democratic leaders to be followed by trial for treason and execution because they're pedophiles, because they're cannibals. And now think of what that does to the political discourse. If you disagree with a Democratic politician, you think he has the worst ideas possible, that's one thing. But if you think he is part of a sinister pedophile, well, sinister, is there any other kind of cannibal, he's pure evil, he's satanic, and that this has become a final spiritual battle, suddenly that licenses you to do anything. That certainly convinces you that there will be no fair election. You can't have a fair election if you're running, as QAnon maintains, literally against the devil. You can see how that serves Trump. You can see why he won't back away from it. And that also explains to a certain extent why, even as some Republican leaders have denounced this, far more have not. People we know better, and yet they are making an actual deal with the devil for the political utility of this mass delusion.
So I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. The appointed Georgia Senator Kelly Loeffler celebrated the endorsement that he received from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a controversial congressional candidate who's embraced elements of QAnon. And, you know, conspiracy theories, there's fertile ground on the internet, and so I'm sure there are all manner of different types of conspiracy theories that QAnon has risen above, but it certainly seems like Republicans have sort of taken a hold of QAnon. It's for obvious reasons. Democrats wouldn't. But I'm wondering, so are you arguing that this is politically advantageous for Republicans, or that there are some that actually sort of believe certain elements of this? Is QAnon just kind of like a tool?
Yeah, politically, is it politically advantageous or is it just useful? And I think the answer is yes to both. I think, and I think that's when we look at the evolution or devolution of Trump's rhetoric over time. I think you see that clearly in his thinking. And you mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia. There's a number of congressional candidates, several of whom are likely to get elected, who have been more explicit in their endorsement of this idea. But beyond them, there have been a large number of Republican candidates who have very carefully done, just as Trump has done, have avoided condemning it. And we even see the Texas State Republican Party, which has made as its slogan, the storm, and then wink, wink, said, oh, yeah, we made our slogan the slogan of QAnon. What a coincidence. Nothing to worry about here.
Jeff, before I let you go, let me ask you about something that I don't know that it has been explored as much as I think perhaps it should be. The Times of Israel had an interesting article. When we mentioned Kelly Loeffler, we mentioned that she is celebrated the endorsement of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is somebody who believes in QAnon allegedly, she appeared to accuse George Soros, she appeared to accuse the Rothschild family of being involved in this cabal of Democratic pedophiles. There is a concern now from some groups that are studying QAnon that they do appear in some instances to have these sort of anti-Semitic beliefs either baked in to them or outright. In other words, are these anti-Semitic beliefs part of QAnon, or do some of the posters just happen to be anti-Semites while also believing in QAnon? And even the notion around pedophilia and the spilling of blood of children has its antecedents in anti-Semitism. And I wonder if this isn't just at least in some small part, and through the research that you've done, a new way for anti-Semites to spread their horribleness through the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. It is deeply baked in, and just as you say, that the idea that there's child sacrifice, and the details are too revolting. That the idea that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are using blood and fluids of children to make things. This is an old, I mean, hundreds of years old anti-Semitic idea called the Blood Bible. This is the idea that powered pogroms in Tsarist Russia. This is the idea that powered the Nazis. I think many in QAnon don't realize that when they talk about Jewish bankers and about child sacrifice, that they are engaging in what is an almost ancient tradition of anti-Semitism. Some do and some don't. And that's what makes QAnon powerful, is it's kind of a convergence from a lot of different directions of anti-Semitism for those who specifically want to pursue it, and those who may not think of themselves as anti-Semites. Many evangelical Christians get involved who would say they oppose anti-Semitism, and then suddenly here they find themselves, you're showing a picture of Save the Children, drawn into this idea that there is one group, the globalists, who are more dangerous to the children than any other. And it's a hop, skip, and a jump for them from that to Soros, to the idea of Jewishness as itself the threat to what QAnon, I should say, QAnon, by the way, frames itself as Christian. I think many Christians would disagree with that, but what QAnon frames itself as a Christian Great Awakening.
Yeah, you know, the thing about an online movement like QAnon is pretty much anyone can inject anything into it because, I mean, we don't know who's behind any of these posts. We don't know if it's one person or thousands of people or any of that stuff. Hey, Jeff, this was a really good conversation. We really appreciate you spending time with us. I will remind both of you that there was an attempted storming of Area 51 just last year. I think it dissolved into sort of a mediocre music festival, but there was a group that,
I was going to be part of that, Anne-Marie. I want to know what's going on there.
I'm not surprised. Jeff, Sharlet, thank you so much. The article was really good. Thank you.